going to drive around in the 2 square miles that we spent the preceding night.
I got nightmares in my head, I fear thoughts build up until I can't hear. My mind fills up into a creature.
Hello and welcome to True Crime Rocket Science, the most authentic voice in true crime. Now what I find a bit strange about what she's saying there is she woke up the next morning and she was now going to sort of drive around the neighborhood and, to go to all the places in a 2-mile radius where she thought he might be. But wouldn't anyone basically go to the last place that you saw someone? Wouldn't that be the natural thing to do? I mean, you feel like it's such an emergency. Why on earth are you driving around to random places? Wouldn't you start at the place where you last saw someone? I don't know about you. I just find that kind of strange. Now, as the Karen Read case fast approaches its 2-year anniversary, it is fast being overtaken by a political shitstorm, the like of which we haven't seen in true crime in some time. It's a case that's all about a battle for reality. What really happened here? Meanwhile, a Boston community is tearing itself apart. According to CNN, quote, reassurances from the police and prosecutors have not done much to quell the debate in this upper middle-class suburb, known for being the headquarters of donut chain Dunkin' Donuts. Walk into a coffee shop or restaurant and anyone who's heard about the case has formed an opinion. In Canton and surrounding towns where family ties span generations, residents have picked sides, leading to grudges and accusations. And that's according to an article that is sort of the prime article. It's like the main headline on CNN today. Going back to the article, Albert's brother is a selectman in the town, which has added another layer to the debate, some former Canton residents told CNN. There are people who privately talk about the case and are scared to say anything out of fear that the police or other townies would be upset. And I have to say, I did a live stream yesterday and you could sense that there's a lot of people activated online and they are ready to come charging in, guns drawn kind of thing, ready to do battle with anything you've got to say, just as a newcomer. But back in Canton, even the local businesses have an understanding that they can't just pick a side, because if they do, they might lose business. That's how serious it is. On this channel, it's also not about picking a side. It's not about trying to find the best way to monetize. It's simply about following the evidence. Who would do that? Who would approach cases from that perspective? In any event, before we get to the defense's theory, and I do want to discuss that in a bit more detail, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, please do. If you're someone who has a scientific mind, who likes critical thinking, who wants to be in a place where there's kind of an educated approach to true crime, I've written over 100 books on the subject, then I think you've come to the right place. If you're enjoying this episode, please like, share, leave a comment. You can also hit the thanks button, and let's get started. Now, in order for the defense theory to work in this case, in order for John O'Keefe's injuries to make sense, and that's really how the defense theory kind of is sensible. Let's have a look at these injuries. Well, what caused them? Well, he can't simply have been beaten to death inside a party where there were no witnesses. In other words, if you just say that he was beaten, well, then it's not going to be consistent with the autopsy. If it was just that, his injuries would still not make sense. Is that clear? No, in order for the defense theory to work, he also has to have been brutally savaged by a dog, but not so brutally that this killed him. He has to be carried outside afterwards, leaving no blood trail for the cold to finish him off. That's the one theory. The other one involves a drunk girlfriend who struck him with a vehicle, said to her father, I think I struck something, and incidentally, her vehicle did suffer damage that very night. Once upon a time, sensible people believed that the simplest explanation was often the most likely to be true. Well, not anymore. even Karen Reid's father has since changed his statement about his daughter, but or basically he says he believes that not that a car was involved, but that that someone beat up John O'Keefe. This case has become about Karen Reid and a growing army of high-powered lawyers, bloggers, and folks in the community on the one hand, versus, I guess, Canton PD and some people who see the simpler explanation as the more sensible explanation. And so what happens when an almost an entire community is mobilized to not trust or believe local law enforcement? Well, nothing good. And I do wonder if O'Keefe wasn't a cop and if he wasn't killed where a cop lived, what their defense would have been. In other words, what I'm saying is, did the defense recognize this kind of political bias on the ground, and have they not used this to try to win their case? According to CNN, quote, Sean McDonough, a former Canton resident and retired DEA agent, said the deep divisions surrounding the case don't surprise him. He attended high school in Canton. He knows the town's culture and politics, and he said there's long been a deep mistrust of the police department. Now, what I'd like to know is, okay, so there is a deep mistrust. Is that deep mistrust justified? And what has led to this deep mistrust? The other thing that I think one's got to look at is, you may have corrupt cops. Maybe there are corrupt cops. Does that then mean that this is what happened to John O'Keefe? In other words, you are saying that there's a correlation here, and that means there must be causation. But guess what? Correlation does not imply causation. It means that just because two things correlate, it doesn't necessarily mean that one causes the other. By the same token, association is not causation. So let's say sleeping with shoes on is strongly correlated with waking up with a headache. You often wake up with a headache, and you're wearing your shoes. Was that caused by your shoes? Well, actually the cause of it is drinking the night before. There's a lot of police corruption, and then a policeman dies, and this must be because of corruption and a cover-up. But the part that I don't understand is, if there's so much collusion and corruption going on, why would a policeman be killing another policeman and not just somebody who's not a policeman? Surely if they're all buddy and they're all in on some kind of conspiracy, then why would they be targeting one of their own? If it's this sort of nepotistic society in that sense. Let's look at a couple of other examples. Another one is, someone claimed in an article in 2013 that more sex causes higher income. And the quote goes, scientists found that people who have sex more than 4 times a week receive 3.2% higher paychecks than those who have sex only once a week. But there was actually a third factor involved here, and that was health. Someone who was earning a little bit more money would tend to be healthier, and that would be the main reason that someone would be having more sex and earning more. Another way to think about this is reverse causality, that once you're earning more income, well, then you have more sex, not the other way around. Another way to test this theory is, if you went to any other place in the world and you had a similar situation, how would people respond? Would they think that this was definitely caused by a policeman and a police dog? I know a lot of people don't want to hear this, but when there seems to be a relationship between two variables. So in this case, there's corruption, there's police corruption apparently, and then someone is murdered. Well, there must be a relationship there. Well, it's actually in the reverse. It's being applied in the reverse way. There's a murder. Well, there's corruption, and so there's an example of that. Really? And so the proper way to deal with the relationship between variables like this is to be conservative and to assume that the relationship is correlational rather than causal, and then to test how correlational it actually is. We also shouldn't dismiss correlations completely. We just need to be careful how we interpret these correlations. So this guy McDonough says there's a very big cloud hanging over the town. And of course this case is exacerbating that. McDonough and others, according to the article, that are interested in the case have joined private Facebook pages to dissect scenarios of what they believed happened that night. And so bad things have been brewing for so long now. As I say, the Karen Read story was elevated to the top story on CNN this Sunday. Now, if I wanted to maximize profit from this story, the strategy would be simply take the side of the more popular narrative. And the more popular narrative is that Karen Read, take her side, join in with a ready-made online army and hook into the ready-to-use plethora of hashtags, and then let popular support and momentum do the rest. So if I had a horse in the race, that would be my strategy. But the thing with caring about authenticity is that you tend to do the more difficult thing, and you care about a thing that doesn't always seem to care so much about you, the cold, hard truth. The cold, hard truth doesn't always pay the bills. And you could leave the cash grabbing to someone else when you do that. In other words, let somebody else grab the cash. I personally wish I could say that I trust justice to triumph in the end in this case. And that's not to say I don't trust the police. It's simply that I'm wondering what a jury is going to make of this, a jury that comes from this place. If I'm honest, I will say I expect this case to be a losing cause. And I'm sorry to say that. In my opinion, if Karen Read wins, everyone else loses. That's just my opinion. The community loses, law enforcement and yet another law enforcement loses, and then yet another tear is achieved through the fabric of American society, and at a time when America can least afford it. The United States, and I've spent a few months traveling the length and breadth of your country. I've gone from east to west, north to south. It's a great country. But since when was a country called the United States so divided? Do you deny that America is already split down the middle politically? And so what's happening in a Boston suburb is that splitness is beginning to manifest in a community, and in a way that's sad to see. Why does America have to be careful about being split down the middle? Why do you think? Why do you think America's got to be careful about being destroyed from within? I could give you a long, authentic, boring explanation about it, but I'm not going to do that. Instead, I'm going to recommend you go to Netflix, turn on your Netflix and watch a movie called Leave the World Behind, and then decide for yourself if you want to sign up for a one-way trip away from normal, away from the society you have, in favor of a society where there's no going back to normal, where there's no, you're kind of going to a point of no return. Is that really what you want? You've got such a great country, why do you want to let it go or give it away? Is it so hard to disagree without being disagreeable? Is it so hard to have an opinion without taking sides? Is it so hard to think about something without belonging to a particular faction? Food for thought, I hope. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you guys next time.